A Hand in the Dark. Conclusion. A chair creaked. A belt squeaked. Steps retreated. Another few moments of whispered conversation at the knife edge of light. I kept my eyes tightly closed, tucked back into the pillow on my belly again, away from the light. Steps back to the bed. The chair creaked. I concentrated on breathing. The doctor wants to wait an hour, now that you're awake, to monitor your condition. He says he'll consider releasing you if you remain stable for another hour. Okay? I was so tired. I just wanted to go to bed. I just wanted to go to sleep in my bed. I made a closed fist. Yes. Thank God. Charlie had not wanted to try to force her to lay down, but he would have, if he'd had to. Stubborn woman! But he understood. He'd been in the hospital with gallbladder surgery years ago. He remembered hating being there, hated waiting to be seen by the doctor, waiting to be released, waiting for the mandatory wheelchair. Yeah, he understood, but he could be stubborn too. He reached over to pat Elise gently on the hand. Sounds good. I'll be back in an hour, less than. If you're still good, I'll see you get out of here, okay? Her hand closed in a fist. Yes. Okay then, he repeated, patting her hand once more. Her fist opened and she grasped his hand in hers, startling him again. Do you want me to stay with you? Her hand tightened on his. Okay, I'll stay here. Charlie felt her hand relax under his, still holding on, but with less of a death grip now. Carefully, he pulled the chair closer so he could rest his arm on the edge of the bed. He leaned back in the chair and stretched out his legs. His stomach rumbled, and her fingers tightened briefly. He tightened his in reply, and listened to her breathe. Got a hot tip? Detective Lucero watched the IT guy working on the video. Or working on the audio track of the video, rather. The tech had turned down the brightness on the monitor as far as it would go at Lucero's request. With headphones on and eyes closed, the tech frowned in concentration. Squinting at the monitor for a second, he adjusted a setting on the video player program, then closed his eyes shut once again. Farley walked up to Lucero. Anything? He asked quietly. Lucero shook his head. Well, we might have something from the tip line, Farley began. Lucero glanced at Farley. Might have? Farley shrugged. Reports on fancy red sports cars, convertibles, have been coming in. There's some similarities between the sightings. Oh? Like what? Farley had Lucero's interest now. Like time of day and location, direction, Farley answered. Really, Lucero said. Let's take a look at the map. They left the tech guy fiddling with the audio and went over to stand before a map of Houston on the wall. So, a shiny red convertible has been seen crossing the overpass out of the Clear Lake residential area here. Farley tapped a thin black line on the map. Heading northwest, early mornings, pretty regularly, but no Clear Lake residents have a shiny red convertible. Really? Lucero sounded skeptical. Farley bristled. We've talked to all of the current Clear Lake residents. Everyone was very cooperative. We also cross-checked with DMV records. There are red sports cars aplenty in the neighborhood, but they're all domestics or they aren't convertibles. Lucero put his hand up. Sorry, I didn't mean to sound... Farley nodded, mollified. Sure, no problem. Anyway, we've collated all the reports about a red convertible, and there's one thing a lot of them also have in common. The guy that's driving it is usually wearing a scarf. Lucero tipped his head back. Really? I can think of one person who matches that description. Maybe two. Farley nodded. The gay couple that run that antique store in the University District? They live on the premises too. I thought of that. Pulled DMV records on both of them. They each own a shiny red convertible. Seriously? Lucero was surprised. Are they both foreign cars? Farley shook his head. No, here, I've got the reports. Let me show you. Lucero followed Farley back to the large conference table in the middle of the room. See, Davy Jones, and who would name their kid Davy Jones? Anyways, he owns a Ferrari. Red. Convertible. Lucero's eyebrows rose. What about his partner? What does he drive? Cliff Taylor, a Mazda RX-7. Not an import, but also a red convertible. This newest body found, the torso-only victim? Farley nodded. Yeah, weird. None of the other bodies were dismembered. Exactly. And the Vic must have been killed months ago. What if we don't have just one killer? Maybe a one-off? Farley offered. You know, like it was his first victim and he tried the whole dismembering thing and then decided it was too much trouble or something? Lucero's forehead creased as he stared at the map on the wall. Both men stood lost in thought when the tech guy spoke suddenly, startling them. I think I've got it. It really isn't much. The audio on this sucks. But I think you can understand what she's saying. See if you can hear it now. The tech handed the headphones to Farley, who handed them off to Lucero. Go ahead, detective, rank before. Lucero just rolled his eyes and put the headphones on, then nodded to the tech to start the video again. The monitor, nearly black, flashed red for a moment as he heard a faint sound. Bending toward the computer, as if that would help him hear better, he frowned at the monitor, then closed his eyes just as he thought he heard a word. He could see the light brighten behind his eyelids with the third flash. He could almost make out the word. It sounded like flash. Free. Lucero blinked and looked at the tech, taking the headphones off just as the monitor went completely white, even with the dim setting, then black before settling into the gray of the interview room. Free? Is that what she's saying? Free? The tech nodded vigorously. Yep, that's what I got too. Want to give it a listen, officer? Farley shook his head. Nah, if you two heard the same thing, I'm not going to argue with you. But what does it mean? Why was she saying that? It doesn't make any sense. Lucero frowned, then shook his head. I don't think it helps us at this moment. Maybe when she wakes up, we can find out what she remembers. If she remembers. Farley had a thought. Detective? Doesn't one of the antique guys have some kind of wood hobby? Lucero blinked. Yeah, I think so. Maybe both. Something like a secret society. Woodworkers of the world. Something like that. A person with those kind of skills and knowledge would have no problem hacking someone's limbs right off of them, too, wouldn't they? Lucero gave Farley a sharp look. You're a lot smarter than you let on, aren't you? Farley shrugged, changing the subject. Have you heard anything from Charlie? I haven't heard anything. Lucero shook his head, pulling out his cell phone to check. Nope, no calls or texts. Putting his phone back in his pocket, he told Farley, have them come in, both the antique guys. We'll ask them some questions. See if they have anything helpful to tell us. Farley tried not to sigh out loud, but failed. Yes, sir. I'll go talk to them now. Their shop should still be open. Don't be too nice. Don't threaten them, but don't be too nice. Copy that, sir. I'll call in with any updates. Lucero nodded, his gaze returning to the map on the wall.